When building forms, quite often our form components have a state that is initialized based on what we get from the server. For example, let's imagine instead of a login form, we were building a movie form. In our movie form, we need to call the server, get the movie with the given ID, store it in the state, and then populate the form. So here in our login form, let's add our state property, set it to an object. In this object, we want to have an account with two properties, username and password. For now, I've just initialized these to an empty string. Now save the changes. Back in the browser, let's type something in the username field. Now let's open up React DevTools. Then let's search for our login form and look at our state object. See what's going on here? We have this username property here that is completely detached from this username field. Because these input fields have their own state, whatever we type here is stored in the input field. To solve this problem, we should get rid of the state in this input field and only rely on this state object. We want to have a single source of truth. How can we do this? We should convert this element to a controlled element. Remember, controlled components, controlled elements are the same. They don't have their own state. They get all the data via props, and they notify changes to the data by raising events. So back to our login form. Here's our username field. We need to set the value attribute to this.state.account.username. With this change, this input field is no longer going to have its own state. We're using props to set its value. So its value is always coming from state account username. Save the changes. Now back in the browser, note that if I type something here, nothing happens. The reason for this is because currently the username property in our state is an empty string, and because we have bound the value of this input field to our username in the state, it's always showing an empty string. To solve this issue, we need to handle the change event of this input field. Whenever the user types something here, that event is raised, and that's a good time for us to get what the user typed and update the state. Updating the state, as you know, will cause a re-rendering of this form, so our input field will be re-rendered with the updated state. Let me show you. So back to our username field, I'm going to handle onChange event and set it to this.handleChange. Now let's implement this method. So handle change, we set it to a function that takes e or event as an argument. Now here we want to update the state, but as you have learned, we're not going to update the state directly. Instead, we want to clone it and then have React update the state. So let's create a new account. We set it to an object, use the spread operator to clone this.state.account. Then we set account.username to e.current target. That returns our input field, and then we can get the value property. And finally, we'll call this.setState and pass our new account object. Back to the browser. Now, I can type something here that perfectly works. In React DevTools, if we search for login form and look at our state object, you can see the username property of this account object is in sync with what we have in the form. So we have a single source of truth. However, in our current implementation, we're only updating the username property of our account. What about the password? We'll look at that next.